Thanks for the. And good morning, everyone. It's great to see. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and friends. And I have to tell you, the ambition of Scotland is contagious. I can't tell you how many countries I've been in where I've told the story of what we see happening here as an institute. So I stand here with a lot of humility and admiration for the work that you do, and also understanding that there are challenges and ways of figuring out what to do as we move forward. I'm going to start with an exercise. I like to make these things interactive. We have very limited time, and I'm going to try to be very, very quick with this exercise. So I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. Just close your eyes completely. As my daughter, my little one says, no cheating, please. No peeking. And just close your eyes completely. And envision yourself just going around, moving 180 degrees. You're sitting down, but envision yourself standing up and going around 180 degrees and then sitting down again. And after you sat down, I do want you to do this physically with your eyes closed. I want you to take your right hand, your right arm, and point forward, just forward, right in front of you. And then what I want you to do with your eyes closed is to point towards the north. With your eyes closed, point towards the north. Keep your arm, your fingers pointing the way that they are. And please open your eyes. I am not sure whether you worked in a system ever where things are a little across purpose. I know that I have, but I think the intention of today, as it has been throughout your careers, is to think through, in the service of the population of Scotland, stop, think, and reflect about what's our common north. By the way, the north, I was told by a couple of people, including here, is right there. At the end of the day, we'll all point in the same direction. It's no insult to your sense of direction, by the way. So please don't take it that way. So I'm going to do three things here. I'm going to re-emphasize the messages. I think Angelina pointed out rightly that these are things that we know. I'm just going to offer a few thoughts around framing, the context, and the paradigms. Talk about the triple aim a little bit, and I know you're familiar with it from its inception and perhaps even from before. This is an intuitive concept for systems thinking. And I'm going to offer a couple of opportunities and finish with a statement conveyed through a story, which again builds on Angelina's thoughts, which I didn't know the detail of today, but let me reassure you, there are no magic bullets, as we've heard from the first two speakers, but you have everything that you need, and I'll make sure that I weave that through the presentation. I'm going to ask you to consider this. I've been looking at ontological coaching over the last year, and we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. So the invitation for today, I think, and the opportunity to breathe. This is the world upside down. To take a step back and breathe is to analyze the observer that we are individually and then systemically as an organization. The actions that we take and the use I'm thinking and doing is, if we're not happy with the results, we change the action, which without changing the observer that we are, which takes us back to the same place. Get here, and we go here, and then we get here. If we don't test this every so often, it's hard to create this level of learning called double loop learning, which is that challenging of the observer that we are. So I'll ask you to keep that in mind as we go through. And I'm going to say this very improve. And I think Martin very eloquently, and some of you with the questions, talked about the kind of assurance, the accreditation scheme, which is a method, everyday continuous improvement of our systems and innovation. We see that as the leaders trilogy, and in a way the leaders responsibility in terms of their system. So I'll start with a few thoughts around the context and the paradigm. On Monday last week, this was published in the Lancet, and it refers to the 25 by 25 initiative, which is by 2025 we should reduce the incidence of those four things by 25%, 25 by 25, by tackling this thing. And the argument of it was that if we don't up the pace on tackling this thing, we'll be missing out on 37 million people globally. Now, I'll tell you, if you look it up, that in the high-income countries, the opportunity is probably a little less than in the low and middle-income countries. But it's a place that we're moving to in terms of our aging population and chronic conditions, which all of them are. And if you look at the causes of mortality in Scotland, it's not really a lot different than other high-income countries. And I can assure you that those four are probably in the associated with the top 10 conditions here in Scotland. And we know there's many ways of depicting this, but we know that what we do in healthcare is only 10% of what impacts health outcomes. There's other things. There's other things that are perhaps more complex and not less important to get to improving our common north, which is the well-being of the population of Scotland. And don't underestimate this. I grew up in Venezuela, in South America, and we have a very paradoxical reality. But one thing I've learned from first-hand experience there, and it's that there's a direct correlation between health and wealth and health and development. And it is the responsibility of this group of leaders, alongside other people outside this room, of course, to in a way help the development of the country and its continuous ambition to be a world leader in everything that it does. So I wouldn't underplay that responsibility. Sometimes we focus on a single thing, so targets or safety or the responsibility of this group here in terms of population health is vital for the well-being of Scotland as a country. And we know, I'm not sure why this moved here, that the largest impact interventions may be related to things that happen way outside the context in which we've been traditionally used to working in. So let's keep that in mind as a paradigm shift within the triple aim. And one of the reasons why the platforms here in Scotland, I think, are incredibly strong is because here the degree of alignment between policy and what the future is throwing at us, I think it's pretty deep. The words in green are integration, healthier lives, longer lives, quality and safety, person at the center, anticipation, self-management, and so on. So this is all very aligned with what's coming at us. So you're not reactive, you're proactive in that way. And this doesn't solve the problem because it doesn't give us the how, but the what is there. And I think having a joint ambition around this 2020 strategy, it's an absolutely vital piece of the puzzle for the future, for shaping that. So the triple aim has three basic premises, and the three corners of the triangle are, it's about the simultaneous pursuit of these three things: health of the population, experience of care, which is safety, effectiveness, timeliness, and so on, and the resources. So we need to think about these three things, and I've included the value equation. I was relaying to Linda during the break that we are learning more and more business school about some of these value equation intricacies in terms of the how. So they've put out this activity-based costing principle, and we're working with them with 30 organizations globally to learn more about value. But the triple aim is about value. It's a simultaneous pursuit of those three things, knowing that resources are limited, knowing that getting care right the first time is hugely important, and knowing that ultimately the health of the populations and that well-being is what we're after. And in pursuing the triple aim, there's a number of paradigms that are, when we think about the observer that we are, that I think are challenged. And excuse the American language here of top-line revenue. We're moving from volume to value. This last week, I was sitting with one of the, I would say maybe decision makers in one of the continental European countries, and he was saying that there was arguments for and against having lowered the productivity, which means the number of people that went through surgeries and so on in this particular country, which is a country that has incredible outcomes. And he was saying, well, lowering the productivity for things that we do to patients might be a good sign that we're doing good things in the preventative side. So the transition towards triple aim thinking and the whole 2020 agenda, I think, challenges some of our perception and allows us to think about using new mental models, seeing the world through perhaps a different set of eyes. And there's a few propositions in this slide that allow us to think about this differently. So let me get into how very, very briefly I provide a couple of examples. Getting started on the triple aim is considering some of the methods of improvement. Martin talked about lean. I think the foundations of all these methods are understand your problem, have measures to know where you're going, know what you're doing in terms of a portfolio of projects, have some sort of governance and leadership infrastructure behind that, and an execution plan with some degree of accountability using measurement for improvement. But these are the basics. So the segmentation, purpose in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and then measures and a portfolio, leadership infrastructure, and an execution plan to get there. And that can start at a macro level. This is Rafa Bengoa. Rafa was the Minister of Health for the Basque Country in Spain. He understood that segmenting the entire population and knowing exactly from the 2.2 million people who had a chronic pathology and who hadn't, and from the chronic pathology people who needed what, was hugely important in terms of understanding what they needed to do and what kind of resources and interventions they needed to design and where. This moved them away from perhaps a hospital-centric thinking and system towards a much more population health-oriented framing. I'm going to go from Spain to the US. We know that diabetes is a big problem linked to a number of things, including lifestyle, and complications are costly in human terms, in disability terms, in financial terms, and in terms of hospital utilization. And this is an example from Health Partners, and this is around framing. So segmentation is important, measurement is important, and also how you frame the problem and how you convey that to your community once you've decided to take this path. So the way of doing it. So instead of we're doing better, you could say we had 364 fewer heart attacks. We have 68 legs that would have been amputated. Otherwise, we have 625 eyes that would have been damaged significantly otherwise, and we've saved some money. So you're measuring outcomes, you're measuring the quality of the service, and you're measuring the financial impact. So you're going to the value equation of things through segmenting the population. As they've segmented this, they've segmented many, and you're linking the process improvement with the number of outcomes that it affects using a triple aim approach for the population. This made me wonder, and I know that there's many initiatives here in Scotland, and I put that number up there. Any ideas of what that number means roughly? It's not exact. In fact, I think it might change every day. So it's so number of employees roughly. It might be 152,343 or something. I don't know the exact number, but I wondered if just to convey a sense of what might be possible, I'd offer another example from Belen, which is in the state of Wisconsin, which is in the north of the U.S. And I drew the network triangle because the impact that 150,000 employees could have in terms of their families and so on is huge. In Belen, they decided to use the triple aim and to start with their population. and by their population they meant their employees. What if we took every employee of the health service and started on a AAA population health-based approach to get to value? And through getting to that segment, we understood basically the entire population of Scotland. If you start to trickle down the impact of those 150,000 people on their close ones, and if you start thinking about the network, it's a huge impact. So Bellin went through moving to population health, awareness, engagement, accountability, and this culture of health, and they had metrics. So we talked about segmenting, we talked about measures, and so on. Forget about the detail on the slides. They had metrics that they tracked regularly. Those included financial metrics, per capita costs, and so on, and the cost savings that were realized were explicit and publicized to continue to build will throughout the system. And when they thought about improved experience, they thought about prevention, they thought about reduction in cases that would have otherwise gotten to a point where they would have been very expensive to manage. And they thought about some of the infrastructural issues that they had to tackle in order to get to where they wanted to be. In their health risk assessment, they also found an approach for the high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. This is not rocket science, and I'm sure you're all doing it within your organizations. Thinking about triple aim implies thinking about the three variables and the simultaneous pursuit of these three variables on a very systematic way. The last thing I'd say after offering the two examples is that we ignore mental health at our peril. So these are percentages of people that have mental illness versus people in the general population, and how often they suffer from the main chronic conditions. I think this is a huge, huge area, and we know that globally 1 billion minds and lives are being affected and not necessarily treated in ways that are not even correct, because they're not being screened for the complications that they may have around mental health. Is that the time? So I offered some context around the need to rethink and relook at the observers that we are in the world. Some principles around the triple aim, and some opportunities for framing and potential segments which we may start to think about. I finish with two things. One, the platform is brilliant. This is Algonquin in the state of Maine in the U.S., and my daughter, when we went there, quite likes to do this thing. So you have a lot of rocks and you build them. I think the platform that you have here and the stability of that from a policy perspective, from an alignment perspective, from a method perspective is incredible. And for whatever reason, we haven't done a randomized controlled trial of this, but the scale of Scotland, the 5 million people scale, seems to be a pretty magnificent number. That and anything under that, to work with a community. The fact that you have a large percentage of the health board leadership here in this room is testament to that. And I finish with Don Victor. You have everything that you need. Don Victor is a school director. Sisters finished primary school, and in order for him to do that, his mother's dream was that one of them became a teacher, a school teacher. In order for him to do that, they had to send him away with relatives into the capital area of Chile, which is called Santiago. And he took on from there one of his first job actually was being the teacher, school director, cook, nurse for a very small school up in a mountain, 120 kilometers from anything that resembled development, with 36 kids, ages 6 through 16. So he had to teach them all and do everything for them. Because of the political situation of Chile, he took a break for 2 or 3 years, during which he did everything from singing in the streets with a guitar and his son on his leg, to fishing, to selling goods from one friend to another, and so on, just to get by and survive. Victor's an inspirational leader in a school right now in Chile. We have a collaborative there at a large scale, and he's one of the forefront leaders of that. He's just finishing the writing of a book alongside the Harvard School of Education to talk about leadership in education. Victor had very little or nothing, and he's achieved a huge deal through being focused on mission. His facial expression, his demeanor, the way he intervenes in meetings, the way he greets every kid that walks into the school every day in the school that he directs are inspirational to me and a reminder that I have everything I need to do whatever I want. And I think we have everything we need, from the outside elements of alignment and so on to the intrinsic elements of being centered on the population of Scotland and the impact that you have and you continue to have as you think and reflect about the Triple Aim efforts in this country. So I look forward to continuing to be engaged with you during the day, and I think we're going to move to a local example of how the Triple